She had imagined this day so many times that it almost felt familiar before it even began. The ride over was quiet except for the soft hum of the car and the gentle rhythm of her thoughts moving between pride and something she could not quite name. Her son had bought a house. A real house in a beautiful neighborhood with tall trees and wide streets and the kind of calm that only came with success. She smiled to herself as she adjusted the scarf around her shoulders. She remembered the nights she stayed awake counting coins to make sure he never felt the weight of struggle. She remembered the mornings she woke before sunrise just to pack his lunch with care so he would never feel less than anyone else. Now he had made it. And today she would finally see it. When the car stopped in front of the house, she paused for a second before opening the door. It was even more beautiful than she expected. Clean white walls, large windows, and a polished front yard that looked like something from a magazine. Her chest filled with quiet pride. She stepped out slowly, taking it all in like a moment she wanted to stretch just a little longer. Before she could knock, the door opened. Her son stood there. For a second she saw the little boy he used to be hiding behind the man he had become. "Mom," he said with a quick smile. She stepped forward and hugged him tightly. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. He hugged her back, but it felt brief, almost rushed. Come in," he said, stepping aside. As she walked in, she noticed how everything looked perfect. Every piece of furniture placed with intention, every surface spotless, every corner quiet. It did not feel like a home yet. It felt like something carefully arranged. Then she saw her. Standing near the kitchen was his wife. Elegant, poised, dressed as if she had been expecting someone important but not necessarily someone welcome. Her smile appeared quickly, but it did not reach her eyes. "So you finally made it," she said. Her tone was light, but something about it felt sharp. The mother offered a warm smile. "Of course I would not miss this," she replied gently. She stepped forward slightly as if to greet her with an embrace, but the younger woman did not move. Instead, she gestured toward the living room. "You must be tired from the trip," she said. It sounded polite but distant. The mother paused for a moment, then lowered her arms and nodded. "Yes, a little," she said. Her son did not seem to notice. He was already talking about the house, pointing at different things with excitement. "We just finished setting everything up last week," he said. "The kitchen is brand new and the backyard is amazing. You have to see it later." She listened carefully, nodding, smiling, letting his happiness fill the room. But her eyes kept drifting back to his wife. Watching. Measuring. Trying to understand. They sat in the living room. The couch was soft, but she sat on the edge as if she did not want to leave a mark. "Can I get you something to drink?" her son asked. Before she could answer, his wife spoke. "There's water in the fridge," she said without looking at her. It was a small moment, but it lingered. The mother stood up slowly. "I can get it myself," she said softly. As she walked into the kitchen, she noticed how everything was arranged with precision. Nothing out of place. Nothing personal. She opened the fridge carefully as if she needed permission. When she returned, her son was still talking, but his wife was scrolling through her phone, barely paying attention. The mother sat down again, holding her glass gently. "So how have you been?" she asked kindly. The younger woman looked up briefly. "Busy," she replied. That was all. Silence settled for a moment before her son filled it again. "You should stay with us for a few days, Mom," he said. "We have plenty of space." Her heart warmed at the offer. But before she could respond, his wife spoke again. "We'll have to see how things go." This time her voice carried a hint of control that was impossible to miss. The mother looked at her son. He hesitated for just a second. Then smiled again as if nothing had happened. "Yeah, we'll figure it out," he said. The moment passed, but something had shifted. The warmth she expected to feel in this house was not there. Not yet. Later that afternoon, she offered to help in the kitchen. "I can prepare dinner," she said. "I know your favorite dishes," she added, looking at her son. He smiled. But his wife stepped in before he could speak. That's okay, I already have a plan, she said. Her tone was firm. Not rude. But final. The mother nodded slowly. Of course, she said. She stepped back feeling strangely out of place in a house that should have felt like an extension of her own life. As the evening approached, she sat by the window watching the light fade across the quiet street. She told herself she was overthinking. That new homes came with new adjustments. That maybe her daughter-in-law was just tired. But deep inside something unsettled had already taken root. At dinner the conversation stayed light. Her son talked about work. About plans. About the future. His wife added small comments here and there but never once asked her anything. Not about her journey. Not about her life. Not even out of courtesy. The mother noticed. But she said nothing. She smiled when expected. She listened when needed. She stayed gentle. Because that was who she had always been. After dinner she quietly gathered her plate. As she moved toward the sink her daughter-in-law spoke again. You can leave that. The words came quickly. Almost sharp. I'll take care of it. The mother paused then nodded. Thank you, she said. She placed the plate down carefully and stepped away. It was a small thing. So small that anyone else might have ignored it. But she felt it. The distance. The invisible line being drawn. That night, as she sat alone in the guest room, she looked around at the unfamiliar walls. Everything was perfect. Clean. Organized. Controlled. But it did not feel warm. It did not feel like home. She folded her hands in her lap and stared quietly at the floor. Trying to make sense of a feeling she did not expect. She had come with love. With pride. With joy. But something was not right. And for the first time since she arrived. She wondered. If she truly belonged there at all. Morning arrived quietly, but the tension from the night before had not left. She woke early out of habit, the kind of habit built over decades of responsibility. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then the unfamiliar ceiling came into focus, and the silence reminded her this was not her home. She sat up slowly, listening. No sounds from the kitchen. No movement in the hallway. Just stillness. She adjusted her shawl and stepped out of the room, careful not to disturb anything. The house looked exactly as it had the night before. Perfect. Untouched. Almost as if no one had lived in it. She made her way to the kitchen, thinking she could prepare breakfast. It was a simple gesture. Something she had always done. Something that had always brought people together. She opened a cabinet, scanning for a pan. Looking for something? The voice came from behind her. She turned quickly. Her daughter-in-law stood near the doorway, arms folded, watching. I thought I'd make breakfast, she said gently. Just something simple. The younger woman stepped forward, her expression unreadable. We usually don't cook in the mornings, she replied. We order or grab something on the way. The words were calm, but they carried a quiet dismissal. I see, the mother said, closing the cabinet. She stepped aside, giving space as if she had crossed into an area she was not meant to enter. I didn't know. It's fine, the younger woman said, though her tone suggested otherwise. A pause stretched between them. Then footsteps echoed from the hallway. Her son entered, adjusting his shirt, phone in hand. Morning, he said, glancing between them. Good morning, she replied with a soft smile. We're heading out soon, he added. Got an early meeting. She nodded. I can stay here, she said. No problem. Her daughter-in-law picked up her keys from the counter. There's nothing much to do here during the day, she said. You might get bored. I'll be fine, the mother answered calmly. Her son hesitated for a moment, then nodded. We won't be long. They left soon after. The door closed with a soft click, but the sound echoed louder than it should have. She stood there for a moment, staring at the empty space. Then she exhaled slowly and moved toward the living room. Hours passed quietly. She tried to keep herself occupied. She adjusted a cushion that was slightly out of place, then quickly put it back exactly as it was, afraid it might be noticed. She walked through the hallway, observing the framed pictures on the wall. There were photos of her son and his wife. Vacations. Celebrations. Moments captured in perfect light. She searched for something familiar. A trace of herself. But there was none. Not a single picture that included her. She paused in front of one frame. Her son was smiling, his arm around his wife, both of them looking directly into the camera as if nothing in the world could touch them. She looked at his face carefully. Trying to find the boy she once knew. But that version of him felt distant here. By the time they returned in the afternoon, the house felt even colder. Her son walked in first, speaking into his phone. His wife followed, placing her bag neatly on the table. "You're back," the mother said, standing up. Her son nodded quickly. "Long day," he said before disappearing into another room. The daughter-in-law walked past her without stopping. There was no greeting. No acknowledgement. Just movement. The mother stood there for a moment, then slowly sat back down. Later, she offered again. "I can help with dinner tonight." This time the response came sharper. "I said I have it handled." The words cut through the air with a firmness that left no room for misunderstanding. She lowered her gaze slightly. "I just wanted to help." "We don't need help," the younger woman replied. The sentence hung in the room. Heavy. Clear. Final. That evening, as they sat for dinner, the silence felt different. Not peaceful. Not comfortable. Just present. Her son scrolled through his phone between bites. His wife ate quietly, her posture straight, her attention elsewhere. The mother tried to start a conversation. "I passed by a lovely park down the street today," she said softly. "It reminded me of when you were little." Her son looked up briefly. "Yeah, it's nice," he said before returning to his screen. His wife did not respond. The moment faded quickly. After dinner, the mother stood again, instinct guiding her movements. "I'll wash the dishes," she said. Her daughter-in-law placed her fork down slowly. "I prefer things done a certain way," she said, her voice measured. "I understand," the mother replied, stepping back immediately. Another small moment. Another quiet boundary. Later that night, as she passed by the hallway, she heard voices from the living room. She did not mean to listen. But her name caught her attention. "She's going to stay longer than this, isn't she?" her daughter-in-law said. Her tone carried irritation. "I don't know," her son replied. "Well, it's not working for me," she continued. "This isn't a hotel." A pause followed. The mother stood still, her breath shallow. "She's my mother," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "And this is our home," came the response. Silence settled between them. The kind that says more than words ever could. The mother stepped back quietly, retreating before she heard anything else. Back in her room, she sat on the edge of the bed. Her hands rested in her lap, still and steady. But her thoughts moved rapidly. She replayed every moment. Every word. Every look. Each one forming a pattern she could no longer ignore. This was not discomfort. This was rejection. Not loud. Not obvious. But consistent. Deliberate. She looked around the room again. At the perfectly arranged furniture. At the untouched surfaces. At the space that held no trace of her presence. For the first time, she allowed herself to admit what she had been avoiding. She was not a guest here. She was an inconvenience. And no matter how gently she tried to fit in, there was no place being made for her. She leaned back slowly, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. Something inside her shifted. Not anger. Not yet. But awareness. Clear and undeniable. And with it came a quiet understanding. Things were not going to get better on their own. Not in this house. Not with silence. Not with patience alone. The invitation came 2 days later. It was presented casually, almost like an afterthought, but something about it felt deliberate. "We're having a few people over tonight," her daughter-in-law said while scrolling through her phone. "Close friends. Nothing big." The mother nodded politely. "That sounds nice," she replied. Her son glanced up from the couch. "You should join us, Mom," he added, though his tone carried more obligation than warmth. She smiled anyway. Of course. All day, the house moved with a different kind of energy. Preparations began early. Fresh flowers were arranged with precision. The dining table was set with care. Every detail curated to impress. The mother watched quietly from a distance, unsure where she fit into the picture. At one point, she stepped forward. "Do you need help with anything?" she asked. Her daughter-in-law didn't look up. "No, everything's under control." The words were smooth, but they closed the door once again. So she stepped back. As evening approached, she returned to her room to get ready. She chose a simple dress, one she had worn on meaningful occasions. Nothing extravagant. Just elegant in its own quiet way. She looked at herself in the mirror for a moment. There was a softness in her eyes, but also something else now. Something steadier. When she walked back into the living room, the guests had already started arriving. Laughter filled the space. Voices overlapped. Glasses clinked softly. It looked like the kind of gathering she used to host herself years ago. Warm. Welcoming. Alive. But as she stepped further in, something felt off. No one acknowledged her arrival. Not immediately. People greeted her son. They complimented the house. They embraced her daughter-in-law. She stood there for a moment, waiting. Then one of the guests noticed her. "Oh," the woman said with a polite smile. "Hello." Her daughter-in-law turned slightly. "This is his mom," she said, gesturing vaguely. No name. No introduction beyond that. Just a label. The mother smiled gently. "It's nice to meet you," she said. A few others nodded politely before returning to their conversations. The moment passed quickly. She moved toward the edge of the room, finding a quiet place to sit. From there, she observed. Her daughter-in-law moved effortlessly among the guests, laughing, engaging, commanding attention. Her son stayed close to her side, following her lead. They looked perfect together. Like a picture carefully crafted for others to admire. Time moved slowly. The mother remained mostly silent, occasionally offering a smile when someone glanced her way. At one point, she overheard a conversation nearby. "Your home is stunning," one guest said. "Thank you," her daughter-in-law replied proudly. "We worked hard to make it what it is." The mother lowered her gaze slightly. She remembered the long nights, the savings, the sacrifices that helped make moments like this possible. But she said nothing. Dinner was announced shortly after. Everyone gathered around the table. The mother hesitated for a second before taking a seat at the far end. Plates were passed. Conversations resumed. Laughter echoed. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to relax. Until it happened. One of the guests turned toward her. "So," the woman said kindly, "what do you do?" It was a simple question. But before she could answer, her daughter-in-law spoke. "She's retired," she said quickly. There was a slight pause. The mother opened her mouth gently. "I used to." "She mostly keeps to herself now," her daughter-in-law added, cutting her off. The tone was light, almost playful. But something beneath it felt sharp. A few guests exchanged glances. The mother forced a small smile. I had a long career, she said softly, trying to reclaim her voice. Her daughter-in-law laughed lightly. I'm sure it was something, she said. The words landed harder than they should have. The table grew quieter. Her son shifted slightly in his seat. But he said nothing. The mother felt a familiar tightness in her chest. Still, she remained composed. Then came the moment that changed everything. Another guest leaned forward. It must be nice having family around, she said, looking between them. Before the mother could respond, her daughter-in-law spoke again. It depends, she said with a smirk. A few people chuckled, unsure of what she meant. She continued. Sometimes it feels like having an extra responsibility, she added, her voice just loud enough for everyone to hear. The words settled over the table. Heavy. Uncomfortable. The mother's fingers tightened slightly around her fork. She looked up slowly. Her eyes met her son's. For a second, she waited. Waited for him to speak. To correct it. To defend her. But he looked away. That was the moment. Not the words. Not the laughter. But the silence. Her daughter-in-law leaned back in her chair. I mean, let's be honest, she continued, her tone now unmistakably bold. Not everyone adjusts to modern life the same way. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Someone tried to change the subject. But the damage had already been done. The mother placed her fork down carefully. The room felt smaller. The air heavier. Still, she held herself with dignity. She looked at her daughter-in-law directly. For the first time. And spoke. I didn't realize I was such a burden, she said calmly. The table went silent. Her daughter-in-law raised an eyebrow. Well, now you do, she replied. The bluntness shocked even those who had been laughing moments before. The mother turned her gaze toward her son once more. This time, there was no expectation left. Only quiet understanding. He remained still. Silent. That was all she needed to see. She stood up slowly. Her movements measured. Controlled. I think I've had enough for tonight, she said gently. No one stopped her. No one spoke. She walked away from the table with her head held high. Each step steady. Each breath deliberate. Behind her, the murmurs began again. Soft. Uneasy. Distant. But she did not turn back. As she reached the hallway, the noise faded. Replaced by silence. The kind that follows something irreversible. She paused for a moment. Her hand resting lightly against the wall. Not to steady herself. But to feel something real. Then she continued walking. Back to the room that had never truly been hers. And in that quiet space. With the door closed behind her. The truth settled fully within her. This was no longer about discomfort. Or misunderstanding. This was disrespect. Clear. Public. Undeniable. And something inside her. Something that had remained patient for far too long. Finally began to change.